what are the mountains you're climbing? And what do the summits look like?
Yeah.
Because if you keep changing it, it's just a life of misery, really. You're just going to be unhappy. But if you're clear on what it is and why, and really understand it rather than just throwing a number, because some people say, oh, I want to be a billionaire, but why? Nothing wrong in being one, but what is the reason and what are you going to sacrifice in order to get there? Because when you say yes to something, you're saying no to a whole bunch of other things. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't need a business partner. I can find another one. I need a father. I just want my dad. So I called him up again a few minutes later after this realization in paradise. I said, Dad, I'm just calling to let you know that I love you. And then I broke down, completely broke down. 4 weeks later, he passes away. And if I didn't have those conversations with him, I don't know how to live with myself. So that's why I tell people, put your ego aside. It's not worth it, especially with the people that you truly love and care about. Pick up the phone and call me.
Ladies and gentlemen, Earthlings and Martians, I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome back to the My First Business podcast, where I find mentors for my business and put them behind a mic. Each conversation is designed for you, my dear listener, and for myself to help us improve our businesses and feel a little less lonely on this turbulent journey. My guest for today's conversation is Saahil Mehta. Saahil's story is a testament to living a life free of regrets and full of purpose. His insights in this episode are almost guaranteed to inspire and for you to rethink how to approach your own journey. So, who is Saahil? Saahil is a true global citizen and a serial entrepreneur with ventures spanning 2 continents. Saahil is not only a best-selling author, a keynote speaker, and a peak performance coach, but he's also a passionate mountaineer. His journey is nothing short of remarkable, from overcoming the fear of judgment to becoming a leader who empowers others. He has worked with global brands like P&G, Dell, HP, Silicon Valley Bank, to name a few, as well as entrepreneur-focused organizations like EO, YPO, TIE, and Corporate Connection. He also leads the SEL training programs for Marshall Goldsmith in India and in the Middle East, and has been recognized as one of the top 10 rising global Indian influencers by India Today. In this episode, Saahil and I delve into understanding ourselves and reflecting through journaling, the importance of prioritizing oneself before others, overcoming the fear of judgment and seeking validation, building generational businesses and co-creating these with family, the value of coaching and mentoring, navigating unsolicited advice and listening to intuition, current challenges and mental models that Saahil is facing right now, and so much more. I'm warning you, this episode might really pump you up and make you do the things you've always wanted to do. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Without much further ado, here's Saahil Mehta on the EO series of the My First Business podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Entrepreneurs Organization, or EO for short. Since its inception in 1987, EO has evolved into a vibrant global network now boasting 17,000 members across 60 plus countries. Now, just in the UAE, where they've been active since 97, it's especially impressive. They're approaching 150 members, representing an average revenue of $120 million and a combined workforce of 31,000 employees across diverse industries like technology, healthcare, logistics, real estate, jewelry, media services, beauty, food and beverage, and I really could go on and on. EO's strength lies in the support and the opportunities it provides. As an entrepreneur, I understand how solitary this path can be, and that's where EO UAE comes in, offering these invaluable resources through its robust calendar of events, workshops, networking opportunities, and a mentorship program that pairs you with seasoned business leaders. So if you're a business owner in search of a supportive community, rich with networking and structured support through accountability groups and mentors, then EO might be just what you need. Curious about EO? Stay tuned for interviews with EO members on this podcast, including today's guests, just so that you can get a sneak peek of what's in store. For more information and to apply, check out the link in the show notes. Saahil, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
We're going to travel so many different parts all around the inner sphere. So a short flight inwards. I wanted to start somewhere where it's a question I think you may ask a lot of your clients. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but potentially one of the questions you do ask some of your coaching clients at least. When you look in the mirror, Saahil, what do you see?
Wow. Well, previously I would be looking at what everyone else sees, the physical self. But now when I'm looking in the mirror, I'm questioning myself every time that, am I being true to myself? Do I have the courage, the humility to just be me? And if not, then what is it that needs to change? And if I am being myself, well, then it's hunky-dory and all smiles.
Yeah. And do you usually get the answer right away when you look, when you're asking these questions to yourself?
Well, sometimes the answer is not that clear because there's something that might be lurking behind the scenes that you haven't thought about. But the most important, Naeem, is I ask the question. And behind the question, there might be another question. And behind that one, there may be another one. And it's all about just understanding what that layer is and going deeper and deeper and deeper until that answer is found. Now, I'm going to be honest, in day-to-day life, sometimes I go, okay, pause. Maybe I can't get to the answer today, but let me park it. Maybe tomorrow, maybe during the weekend. Find a moment where I can dig a little deeper. But the key is to park. Otherwise, it just gets lost.
Do you physically write things down that are potential questions that need answers?
That's where journaling comes in handy. Because journaling is just sharing my thoughts in a book, in a journal. The journal is not with me all the time, so every now and again those thoughts get lost. But when they repeat themselves, memory kicks in as well. And so then I do write it down. But it can get lost. I have to be honest. You hear all these things and you hear all these people sharing things and go, oh, that sounds easy. Or this is how I can do it. But the reality is you have to find that rhythm that works for you. And so as long as you're reflecting on a daily basis, I find that you can capture most of these things. But if you just ask yourself every now and again, at least in my case, things would get lost.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember times where I've regularly journaled versus when I've not. My entire life has been different. Just because taking that moment to reflect versus running from task to task, which every business owner gets into phases where they go from task to task, fire to fire, growth to growth. And you turn around and look and I had this feeling the other day, it's 26th of March. It's been a quarter since the year has been over. And I promised myself that by the end of Q1, I'd have certain goals. And I'd have new goals ready for the new quarter. And just went from thing to thing. The reflection wasn't there. But I want to ask you about, there was a specific area that we were talking about, or I was going to bring up. And this has to do with, I'm going to tie this reflection piece with making yourself the number one priority, which I've heard you talk about or at least write about. I haven't read your book, so pardon me. Or books. Is it books? Book?
It's books, yeah.
Books. So yeah, I haven't read them. So this would make the conversation a lot more fun because I don't know what the answers are going to be. So the long prologue before the question is that when I journal, I have all these separate buckets for my life, different personas I've given myself. So it's the artist in me, the athlete in me, the income generator in me, the son in me, the husband in me. And I had this separation, right? But lately, I realized that the responsibilities geared towards others started to take over. And I'm starting to wake up again, kind of realizing that if I don't take care of myself, everything else would be much harder to do. But I say all of this to ask you, what have you seen as the telltale signs of someone who's getting lost in taking care of others versus looking after themselves? And I want those that are listening to this to see if we can catch a few of them that are kind of in the same place. They haven't made themselves a number one priority. So what are some of the telltale signs of self-reflective prompts that they can use right now?
I love your question, and what I've seen through my own experience as well as the people that I've coached is, one, people pleasing, right? I want to make you happy. I want to make him happy. I want to make her happy. I want to make them happy. And usually it's coming from a place of validation. I'm looking for validation from someone else. I make them happy. They're going to pat me on the back, say, hey, Naeem, you did a great job, and it just feels good. That's one of them. The other one is, and the second of three, is fear of judgment. What will they think if I don't do it? And although it's linked to validation, it's still, I put it in its own bucket because it's coming from a place of fear. Right? And as you may know, fear is always something that pushes you back into your comfort zone. And now, nothing wrong in fear, by the way. Fear is here to protect us. But we need to acknowledge and understand when it's pushing us back into our comfort zone rather than allowing us or enabling us or, to move forward. Fear is protecting us, but yes, we can still overcome by learning. So, we can go deep into fear at another point, but fear is another telltale sign, fear of judgment. And the third is, and we talked about this earlier, about looking in the mirror. It's hard to look at oneself in the mirror. It's so much easier to point outwards than to point inwards. And so maybe, or at least I know in my case, I didn't want to look at my own reflection at times. And by focusing on you or whoever's across from me, that made it easier. So these are some of the signs that I see most often.
Can I add one to that?
Go for it.
Cultural and societal. So sometimes some of us, I'll talk about myself, are raised to put themselves in any amount of pain just to make the other happy, especially familial kind of relationships. It's like, it's not about you. Remember what your dad did, and his father before him, and his father before him. They didn't live for themselves. And being quite vulnerable, like my dad spent his life taking care of other people to a point of retirement where he didn't look after himself, which not just doesn't mean health-wise or mental health-wise. It also means like hobbies, right? Like giving up your own chance to have hobbies, and by the time you're done your responsibilities, how do you spend your time? And obviously religion plays a big part, so you can spend a lot of time in religion, but like outside of that, how do you let the days pass without being glued to the TV for most of the day? So that's societal pressure of like, you know what, you look after your sisters, your cousin is doing this, and it's across, I'm not just saying this is coming from my family, but extended family and people that I know.
And I love what you said. I love it. And I would add to what you're saying, and I'd say that what you just mentioned kind of fits into one of these, a little bit into each of these three that I just mentioned.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
But yes, societal pressure, expectations specifically, right?
Yeah. And that causes the fear, and that causes the lack of validation, or the validation, and what that means for you to progress as in your life as well. What if someone is now starting to wake up or starting to ask themselves these questions? Am I living for others more than I am for myself? What's the smallest thing they can do? What's step one they can take to start unlocking some of that? The smallest thing they can do, maybe listening after this podcast too.
Well, look, I want to say first off, there's absolutely nothing wrong in doing things for others. Yeah. It's a good thing. I find that if I look at my own life, I was focused very much on myself, my growth, my family, my business. There's a lot of my in there. And now there's a shift that's happening where I'm looking to serve others. Whether it's through the coaching, whether it's through voluntary work, whether it's through sitting on boards of NGOs, whatever it might be. But the point is, it's now focusing on serving others. But here's the thing. I had to become the best version or very great version of myself first. And that's why we talk about making yourself the number one priority. We've all heard that saying. If your cup is empty, or near empty, there's very little share. What am I going to do? I'm going to share 2 drops with you? Or shall I say, hey, let me make my cup overflow, and then I've got plenty to give? So again, nothing wrong in serving, nothing wrong in doing things for others, but make sure it's not at the expense of emptying your cup. That's the key. When my cup is overflowing, I can give.
Absolutely. I think when I was in my mid-20s, so my father was diagnosed with Parkinson's at that time, and it threw me into a different direction of how to look at my life going forward, even career-wise. And I started to think about, you know what? This is a sign from the higher being that I need to go towards this kind of route, where I started applying to jobs in the social sector, especially related to Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and everything. And I went through a few interviews, reached out to people on LinkedIn, started doing my research, and I realized I'll use the word crap, but the money was crap. And I just kind of projected my life. I'm like, if I take this on right now, where does that leave me when I'm 40, 45, 50? Fulfilled? Yes, maybe. But will I be able to take care of expenses that are coming up for family, for aging family, to raise a family and give them everything that they deserve? And that's when I started noticing my first spark towards entrepreneurship. At least the thought mind was, looked around at all these big organizations, and who's funding them? Who's starting them? It's people whose cups were already overflowing because they looked after themselves. They looked after themselves, and their needs are fulfilled. They have too much for them to use themselves, and now they're out there with their resources such as time and money and connections and whatever else it is to make the world a slightly better place for others. And that kind of sparked me back into like, okay, your job now is to fill your kind of, I'm still filling the cup. It's taking a lot of time. It's not as easy as it sounds. But I'm still young.
I love what you're saying, because you're talking about filling our needs.
Yeah.
Right. And the question then becomes is, what are the needs?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people say, I need this, I need that. But in reality,
what do you really need?
Your needs, we look at Maslow's hierarchy, right? You need food, check. You need shelter, check. You need
safety and security.
Yeah, you had safety, security, food, shelter.
Clothing,
yeah, there we go. Yeah. Can't walk around naked. So check, right? And then you got the basics, like you said, education, this, that.
Yeah.
Those are the needs. So let's just be very clear that whoever's listening to this podcast, they have absolutely everything that they need. Clear?
Agree.
What they may not have is everything that they want, which is a desire. So now if I plug my wants into my needs category, my subconscious mind is thinking I absolutely have to have these things in order to serve others. And I'm just, again, focusing just on myself, on things that are excessive. And then I may never get to the serving because my excessiveness, my cup just keeps growing. And so I need to fill it with more and more and more. But then when you start asking yourself, hey, whether I live in a 4-bedroom villa or a 10-bedroom villa, how much does that change my life? Or whether I have 1 car or no car or 3 cars to myself, how much does that change my life? You just start asking yourself, are these needs or are they wants? Just call it what it is. If it's a desire, fine. There's nothing wrong in having a desire. I have desires.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's to the point where it's driving unhappiness in my life because I'm constantly wanting more, calling it a need when actually in reality I have everything that I need, then it's like it's the carrot on the stick that I've put in front of myself that I'm just constantly chasing. But the sooner I realize I already have the carrot and that everything else is just a desire, then I can ask myself, okay, is this really going to give me a lot of joy and happiness in my life? Or is it one of those things where once I bought it, I had tremendous joy for the first few days, maybe weeks, maybe a month or so, And then I kind of forgot about it. And then I needed another purchase to fuel that joy and happiness.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to be very clear. Let's make sure we understand that we have everything we need. All the things that we're wanting are desires. So let's call it wants and not needs.
How do you reconcile that with, so we were talking before we started recording about success without fulfillment is ... What was it? Success
Failure.
is failure. But then this is just devil's advocate. All progress relies on certain form of discontent with the current, with the present of some sort. And that's what drives progress. I, for myself, know, and I was having this chat in an elevator with Alina this morning, that all progress comes with pain, some sort of pain, or all growth comes with some sort of compromise. So if we are to progress in our lives as beings, individuals, or as society, or as businesses, there's probably a healthy amount of discontent to have. Versus like the Maslow's hierarchy, we'll call that contentment: food, clothing, shelter. I should be content here. So is desires and discontent kind of the same? And if progress depends on that discontent, is there a healthy amount? And how to think about that?
So look, I'm going to use some of my mountaineering analogies to answer this question. And, as a mountaineer, having climbed some of the tallest mountains in the world, I can tell you a mountain is never straight up. It's never straight up. It's filled with its peaks and valleys. And yes, you will have to go through those valleys in order to get to the peaks. So that's where the mountaineering really taught me, and using all those analogies, that there's no pain, no gain. That's where it really comes from. But the question is our summit defined? If our summit is defined and we understand that in journey there will be ups and downs in order to get there, that's fine. Okay, you'll have that discontentment and whatever else comes in the way. But if the summit is not defined, and let's just use money as an example because everyone can relate to this. Oh, I'm going to be fine once I've got $1 million. You get to the $1 million, you see your friends around you, you're driving a Mercedes and they've got a, brand new spanking red Ferrari, and, you're looking at your 3-bedroom apartment and they've got this nice villa on the beach or something. And like, you know what, maybe 1 million's not enough. It's got to be 5 million. You get to 5 million and then you realize, okay, now I've got my red Ferrari, I've got my villa, but now I see my friends, they're traveling in first class, they're traveling all the time. And, they've got 2 sports cars and a beautiful watch, and
you've got a summer home in Greece.
Yeah, all of that, right? And now 5 million is not enough. Now I need 20.
Yeah.
And so what's happening is that valley, it just gets wider and wider and wider because your summit was never defined. And if it was, it keeps changing. So and you touched upon this a little earlier, that you talk about health and family and community and all these things. These are all your summits in life. So what are the summits that you're climbing? And what I should repeat, what are the mountains you're climbing? And what do the summits look like?
Yeah.
Because if you keep changing it, it's just a life of misery, really. You're just going to be unhappy. But if you're clear on what it is and why, and really understand it rather than just throwing a number, because some people say, oh, I want to be a billionaire, but why? Nothing wrong in being one, but what is the reason and what are you going to sacrifice in order to get there? Because when you say yes to something, you're saying no to a whole bunch of other things.
Absolutely.
Right?
I think just to put it in my words, I guess, that distance from where you are to the summit ain't that far. It's not that far. If you want to make it really complicated, if you want to make your life complicated, then it is far. If you're attaching a lot of desires and wants to that fulfillment, then it's going to be really far. But it could be a moment away. It's just a matter of realization It's a matter of waking up like I'm already there.
Yeah.
And
Or
that happens.
I crossed it 2 years ago.
Or I crossed it 2 years ago. That's what happens to me. So I set these like really aggressive like mildly aggressive goals for myself in some areas of my life. I hit them, and then when I hit them, I'm so empty. I feel such an emptiness inside, and I don't wake up to the emptiness until months have passed. So I go through this emptiness, not realizing that I'm empty. And I look back and I said, oh, it's because I didn't set a new goal. I accomplished my last one, and now I'm just kind of going through the daily motions and not really traveling towards something. And then there's a moment where I'm like, but what if you're already there? And then I forget that. Eventually, I do forget where I actually am and start thinking of, that phase between accomplishing your last goal and deciding on the next goal. It's so nasty, for me at least, because I have decision fatigue, like this one or that one, or this one or that one. So, or either the quantity of goals to take on or the quality of goals to take on, and trying to speed that up as well. But I'm going to switch gears because we can talk about this for a long time. I want to talk about family managed businesses next. So I told you there will be sharp left turns in our conversations. I saw a post from you recently on LinkedIn. Not recently, probably years ago. I was scrolling really hard one night. But the whole stories of like the first generation starts it, the second preserves it, sometimes the second one destroys it, but the third eventually tries to destroy it. So preamble before my question is, Alina and I, my wife and I, we both come from working class families, and we never thought it was a possibility when we were growing up, like family business, what are they? Why even do them, right? And when we moved to Dubai 6 years ago, that's all we were surrounded by. So especially our Sindhi and Guju friends, it's just like first generation, second, third, and we're fascinated by it because it's so much larger to move a thing from a generation to another generation than it is to do it in one shot. It just felt like it wasn't a possibility, and that put us into that thinking cap. Like, what if we build something like that? What if we build something that crosses generations, just as a fun project for life, if you may. But I do want to also mention, while we're talking about this, that your father only got into entrepreneurship when he was 54, I believe.
In his mid-50s, yes.
Mid-50s, which is awesome to hear because from 55-year-olds in my life at that time, or even still today, it's the usual, beta, it's too late for me now. Our time is done. Now it's your time. You young ones, you do your thing. So it's really good to have a counter example to that. God bless his soul. But here's a question. Long preamble. But what do you think makes generational businesses work? What is it specifically? How do you get the second generation's buy-in? Because it isn't a generational business unless a second one comes in. Before that, it's just a business. It only becomes a generational business when the second one comes in. So what makes them work, or what gets the buy-in from the second generation to come in?
Well, that's a big question, and we can steer in many ways. But what I will share is, I believe, from my experience and speaking to lots of other family business owners, is having alignment. That is so key. If you are walking in one direction, your brother or sister is walking in another direction, your kids, when they come in, or your nieces and your nephews come in, start walking in different directions, although they might be similar directions and they're not the same, it's like you went to a mountain range and everyone's kind of picked a different mountain to climb. And at some point, it's going to bring in all sorts of challenges. So I would say that alignment is key. And it's almost like you have a constitution in your company where, one, let's say you're the first generation that created it. At some point, when the next generation comes in, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, is have them review the constitution and give them the opportunity to share their potential amendments. It's not, this is what we've decided, you need to follow. No. This is the constitution that we made to the best of our ability.
At that time.
Yes,
for that
at that time, for that time. And possibly it's been updated along the way. It's possible. As you're now entering, and maybe this is only after they've completed a training period and whatever we want to call it, where they have some familiarity with the business and whatnot, is do you feel that this is good moving forward, or would you like to amend? So get their buy-in. Because when you co-create with someone, and this is not just in a business, right? When I co-create with my wife, when I co-create with my children, when I co-create with my friends, with my team members in the office, there's buy-in. They've given their input, they've agreed, they've signed, it's in writing, it's in black and white. So when things do go a little off, here's the document, this is what we agreed to, right? So co-creation is absolutely key with buy-in.
Right.
But even before that, the question is, I'm passionate about this business. Will my son or daughter even want to take on the business?
Because I've seen counterexamples of that where they're just not interested.
Right. And am I now putting on very high expectations on them to take over? Is that fair on them? Because if I'm doing it with passion and love and all the right reasons, and then another generation comes in and they're just doing it because they are forced to do it, or
begrudgingly doing it.
Yeah, whatever the reasons may be. And that's why, in the beginning you said perhaps the second generation preserves and the third, it then fails, is because the alignment is not there, right? If I tell our children that, hey, you have to do this business, even though they don't want to, and the business doesn't do well, am I surprised? No. So is it something they want to do?
Yeah.
Do they want to explore outside? I read this book. It was amazing, called Hug Your Customer. I can't forget I can't remember the author, but the book, absolutely fantastic. And in that, it was a generational business. They were doing tailored clothes for men, and none of the children were actually allowed to join the family business until they had 7 years of experience outside, where they were able to prove themselves and get to a managerial position. Because then when they came in, they understood what it was like to be an employee. They understood what it was like to grow within a company. They understood how it was to manage a team, and they brought those skill sets, if they wanted to, back into the business. And if they were happy where they were, they could continue. But that was part of the family charter in their constitution, which I just found really amazing. Otherwise it's like, I'm entitled to this business. I don't have to work. I can screw around in college.
Yeah.
And whatever happens, it doesn't matter, because I've got this boss seat waiting for me.
Yeah.
Where I can order people around.
Yeah.
But you don't really understand it from ground up, because you weren't involved. You have to earn it, absolutely. And so there's a speaker in EO, Warren Rustand, who I've met on many occasions, been to his house, love the guy. And he made it very clear to his children. Our wealth, meaning spouse and myself, will be used for your education and all the basics. After that, it's for us to give away. You got to make it on your own. So no matter how good their upbringing was, they knew they had to work and make sure that they had the ability to cover their own lives, because daddy or mommy wasn't going to financially support anymore.
Yeah.
And that begs the question, because we're all thinking, oh, we want the best for our children. My father wanted the best for me. Mother wanted the best for me. They both came from humble beginnings, where they shared a small, tiny, I think it was like a 1-bedroom apartment. One had 4 siblings. One was one of 4, one was one of 5. My dad, they didn't even have a bathroom in their apartment. It was in the hallway, right? And my mom didn't even have a bathroom in the building. It was an outhouse. That's how they grew up. So they wanted us, my sister and I, to have everything that they did not.
To at least have a washroom in the house.
At least a washroom.
At the minimum.
But they gave so much more. And I would say, even though they came from a place of love, I do want to highlight that. And it was, they gave so much in terms of love and holidays and just family time and all those good things. But I feel they also spoiled us. And I didn't, I still remember going to university, and we were staying in this apartment in London, and then I get my first electricity bill and I fall off my chair because we just had all the lights on all the time. And I never had to pay for something, budget something before.
Yeah.
Was I prepared? No. Got the shock of my life. I was like, what the hell? And then after that, we're switching off the lights in every room. We're like, hey, you're in that room, you can keep it on. If you're not,
you can
switch
hear
it
your
off.
mom's voice in your head, like, turn
Yeah,
off
and
that
then,
light.
doing the laundry, the cooking, the cleaning. And that taught me a lot of humility and respect, and I realized then I started becoming more conscious on how I spend money, because before that, it was just, Pops, I need some money to go here, to go there, to buy this, to hang out with the friends. And it's like, okay, here.
Yeah.
Came from a place of love, but it didn't really prepare me from a financial, acumen, right? I mean, I didn't have any. I was just throwing money. So I feel that when you have that responsibility of earning money yourself and paying the expenses, all of a sudden you go, whoa. So this is what it's all about. So like, how can we ingrain that in our families?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I share the similar experiences in that sense, where our parents took every minute of the day to spoil us, both Alina and I, to a point where when we moved to Canada from here, we grew up here, moved to Canada to study, the exact same things. Like, oh, I have to and I'm one of 4, and I have 3 sisters. And they also spoil me a lot because I'm the only brother. If I wanted chai, it was usually, I'd never do this, but it was almost that. And when you start doing things for yourself, to a point where I had to hide from my parents that I was doing part-time jobs, because I just started feeling guilt for taking all this money at some point. If I ever told my dad that I'm working, and I'm pretty sure it would be the same for you, they'd be like, Beta, why do you need to work? I'm sending you the money. How much do you need? How much are they paying you? I'll pay you double. Yeah. Just go and study. I've sent you to study. Just do the thing we've told you to do. So we both, Alina and I both hid the fact that we were working part-time, because at least if I wanted to buy a nice sweater or a shirt with my own money, felt so much better, right? Because your own hard-earned money. But
and look, I'm just going to add to one thing before we move on is, imagine I see this, there's I've been to these temples which are high up on a mountain where they have lots of steps to get there, and it's an effort to make your way up. But it feels so good when you get to the top because you did it. You did it on your own. You fought through it, and you're like, even though it looks like whatever it is, 2,000, 3,000 steps, I'm going to make it. And then you have this other option where people are literally, like Cleopatra, right? You're being carried up.
Yeah.
And yes, okay, it still gives you the experience. But are you going to have that same sense of fulfillment?
Probably not.
So that's what we have to ask ourselves. That sometimes doing it yourself, I know the parents want to spoil, and I know I spoil our children to a large extent as well. But if I'm conscious of allowing them to feel the pain so that they can enjoy getting to the top of the mountain, that's a much better lesson that I can give them.
True. Love can make you fragile, or can force you to make others fragile sometimes. It's just a hard thing to say because love is such a beautiful emotion, but it can have those kind of effects. Hello, everyone. I want to take a moment to share something that's really, really close to my heart. As you know, this podcast isn't just a series of episodes. It's you and I getting mentored by the wisest of the wisest. Each episode is crafted with care, aiming to bring not just stories, but wisdom and insight into the fascinating and sometimes lonely world of entrepreneurship. This is more than just a podcast. It's a personal mentorship session recorded on camera for all of us to learn and grow together. And this is where you come in. If any episode has resonated with you, your subscription or your vote means the world to me. Every subscription lights a fire inside of me and fuels me to keep delivering content that I wish had existed before I started this podcast 2 years ago. So I humbly ask for your support. Please hit pause now and find that subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening to this. It's a small action for you, but it means everything to me. Thank you for being a part of this community and for your support and for choosing to walk this path with me. Stay curious and stay inspired. Thank you so much. You're talking about alignment. I want to dig one final thing. What were some of the things, and they could be funny things too, but what were some of the things you and your dad or your father disagreed on the most as you were in the transitory period? At some point, you probably hit that transitory period where you had a bit more of amendments proposed to the Constitution, as you call it. But yeah, and how did you guys work through them? And what was beautiful about it?
I'm going to start by saying it takes two hands to shake. And what I'm about to share is, it may sound like I'm doing a lot of this pointing, but I do also want to make sure that it's understood that I had a part to play, or did not play. And as a result of that, it didn't get to where it could have been. There are a lot of things we saw eye to eye on, but there were also a lot of things we did not see eye to eye on.
It's natural.
Right?
Yeah.
And the challenge is, although we agreed on what the top of the mountain looked like, he had a particular path that he wanted to take. And I wanted to take a different path. And this is the sad part, because it's not that we were thinking of different mountains to climb. No. Same mountain. Different paths. And he was, it's my way or the highway. And just to give an example, he would say, okay, this is your responsibility. You manage it. And I'd be managing it. And then because it was a pathway that he didn't like, he'd step in and then make the decisions. And I'd be like, well, if you're going to make the decisions, which I don't mind, then don't give me this responsibility. I'll just go do something else. And so we had this tug of war, going on for many years. And luckily for me, or unluckily for me, whichever way I want to see it now, I guess it depends on the perspective, is I had another business. So I'd focus a lot of my energies there. But the reality is, it was more to spend less time with him because we weren't seeing eye to eye, rather than facing it and having the necessary conversation. Because my default mask, Naeem, is people-pleasing, or at least it was. And so I wanted to please my father, because I knew also all the sacrifices he had made. I wanted to please him.
Does that also mean you avoided confrontation?
I avoided in my mind, it was confrontation, but let's call it what it is. I was avoiding the conversation. But yes, I was avoiding what in my mind was confrontation. So rather than addressing it, I said, you know what? Screw it. I don't want to have these fights. I'll just focus on the other business. But in reality, it wasn't about the business. It was just not aligning ourselves. And so our relationship started to become more and more transactional, because what started to happen is this gap was created. And, I always tell people, it might be a small gap at first. It's not like anything huge happened, right? But over time, that gap widens. And it's known as the 1 degree shift. You draw a circle and two lines which are 1 degree apart. You're like, oh, that's nothing. That's tiny. But as the circle gets bigger, which represents time, that line is just getting wider and wider apart. And just to put in perspective, if you launch a rocket to the moon and miss by 1 degree, you miss the moon by like almost twice its diameter, right? So you're way off.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what's happening over time. It's just distancing. And so the relationship started getting transactional. And I still remember my 40th birthday. This is December. It's not in December, but we were celebrating in December 2019. BC, as they say, right? Before COVID. I'm in Bali. It's a spiritual celebration. Is clean, so like vegan, no caffeine, ice baths, yoga, sound healing. You get the idea. And I'm in this place. It's just paradise. I'm in
this retreat style.
Yeah, I'm in this place with some very near and dear family and friends, and the only word I can use to describe it is paradise. Pure nature, birds, a beautiful buffalo that we were washing, etc., etc.
It's great energy all around.
Oh, unbelievable. And great food, it's just paradise. And I get a call from my dad, and he says, son, you received an OTP. Please share it with me. The one-time password for banking, right? So I gave it to him, and then I hung up. And then it just hit me. I said, Saahil, you've spoken after 4 days. And all the conversation was an OTP. So whatever I had as a belief in my head that this is becoming more and more transactional relationship, that just was that final nail in the coffin. I'm like, it has become a transactional relationship. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't need a business partner. I can find another one. I need a father. I just want my dad. So I called him up again a few minutes later after this realization in paradise. I said, Dad, I'm just calling to let you know that I love you. And then I broke down, completely broke down. And he broke down as well. And it was just a very beautiful moment because it's like that ice was broken. That barrier between us was broken. And I realized at that moment he was not as comfortable with emotions as I was. Maybe because of this whole preconceived notion that men have to be tough and you can't show your emotion and boys don't cry and all that garbage. But anyway, he says, call up your mom and say the same thing, and then he hung up. And that's when I realized that I had to take the first step. He was not going to take it. And so as soon as I returned, obviously COVID started a few months later. We lived together, so in the same house. So we're spending a lot of time. And I just started having conversations with him about all sorts of things. Understanding his perspective, understanding his world, because his lens and my lens are clearly different. And I shared my perspective. And we didn't agree on everything, and that's okay. But we started to understand each other a lot better. We started to respect each other more. And it's like just two people in the room spending time with one another. And I share this story because for all those listening, whoever that person in your life is, where the gap has been widened over time, call them up. Meet them face to face, whatever it takes. Because in my case, a year later, contracted COVID. It attacked his lungs. He started having breathing difficulties. We even though all hospitals were full, by God's grace, we got a bed at the American hospital here in Dubai. His lungs continued to get worse, even though we were giving high oxygen. 2 weeks later, I get the phone call that we have to put him on a ventilator. Come now so you can meet with him. Because we weren't allowed to visit because of COVID. So he was all alone. And as you know, in our cultures, especially in this part of the world, it's all about family. When someone's in the hospital,
everyone's there.
Everyone's there. It's like there's a village there, right? And he's there alone. We can't even be with him. So when they told me this, I recorded some videos from the grandkids, just to wish him luck and to give him strength. I get there. He was already on the ventilator. I didn't even get a chance to speak to him face to face. 4 weeks later, he passes away. And if I didn't have those conversations with him, I don't know how to live with myself. So that's why I tell people, put your ego aside. It's not worth it. Especially with the people that you truly love and care about. Pick up the phone and call them.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being vulnerable and being truthful about the role you have played, the two different sons you've been. One of my favorite lyrics from my favorite band, I have a song called Schism. And the line is, cold silence has a tendency to atrophy any sense of compassion. And makes me think about that, about everyone's time is so limited, right? Like when you can't avoid the love you feel in your heart. It's going to come out in one way or the other. Whether you feel it and act on it while they're here, or worry about what you could have said and when you could have said it. But I'm so glad you got the chance to make that one phone call and learn about his philosophies and challenge his philosophies and share yours and understand yourself in the process too. And I'm glad you shared that. Interesting where we take this from here, because I could go into that a lot, because I live with a ton of resentment. So that schism that happens at 1 degree separation can create some really high amount of resentment. Right? That's not a word we use yet, but that's one that I tell Alina that I'm feeling. Letting go of resentment. Any tips? Any sort of tips from that? Whether it's decisions not listened to, whether it's freedom not given, too much freedom given, could be anything.
Well, look, there's two parts to this. One is the other person still alive?
Mm-hmm.
If the other person is still alive, there's a window of opportunity that exists that allows you to have that conversation with them. And look, when you get into those conversations, you have to agree on a few things with yourself. State your outcome. State the outcome that you want. Because I've been in conversations where I was thinking it's going to go in one direction, and then all of a sudden it's going in the other direction. I'm going, what just happened? But if I've stated my intention from the start, the other person knows no matter what I say, they at least understand what I'm trying to achieve.
And where it's leading to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm going to give 5 points. So that's the first one. The second one is listen to them. A lot of people say, yeah, of course I listen. But I challenge people and say, are you listening to them? Or are you listening to the voice in your head that's interpreting what they're saying? Or even worse, formulating a response? Because if you're listening to yourself, it's very clear you're not listening to them 100%. That's what I mean. Yes, I'm not talking about passive or semi-active listening. No, listen to them.
And read between the lines too, while you're listening.
That could be assumptions, right? So I just want to be careful whether someone may have that skill set or not. But clearly, don't assume. Be curious. So if you're not clear on something, just ask a question. Often my wife will tell me, Saahil, why do you ask so many questions? And I say, sweetheart, I love you too much to assume something that could make me think otherwise. And I don't want to take that chance on our relationship, which is too precious for me. And when I say it that way, she understands. And, she's like, okay, well, I can't really argue that point out, right?
Yeah.
He loves me, he cares for me. So, okay, let him ask another 3 questions. Know that there's so the fourth one, so that was the third one. The fourth one is understand there's multiple perspectives. I grew up a certain way, you grew up a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
We see the world with a different set of lens.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than calling you a buffoon because you don't see it from my point of view, why don't I try to understand your point of view? So understand the other person's perspective. And the fifth and last thing I would say is that, sometimes these conversations get heated, things are said, hands are moving around, eye movements, that rolling of the eyes, God knows what else, right?
Yeah.
And that anger starts to build up. And it's coming. Because everyone knows when it's coming, something changes in their body.
Yeah.
You get the hair standing up, the tingling, I don't know what it is. Everyone has something different.
Get the heavy breathing going.
Whatever it is for you, understand that it's about to unleash.
Yeah.
And then pause. Yeah. And then have some sort of technique to bring you back to somewhat sanity. And my coach, she's this amazing woman, Michelle, she told me, Saahil, think of yourself as a horse and a horse rider. So generally you're the horse rider. You're telling the horse where to go, what speed to go, blah, blah, blah. But as your emotions start to get out of control, you transition to the horse. Now, all of a sudden, you're a wild animal. You can't control every move of yours. And it often results in, I wish I didn't say that. I wish I didn't do that.
Yeah.
Right? And so I usually use a breathing technique. That's what helps me. And I just do, deep breathing and just focus on that. There's many different types, whatever works for you. But the point is, I do that until I transition back to the horse rider again. Because even if I'm upset in my tone, at least I'm responding rather than reacting. So if I follow these 5 tips, I can have that conversation with them, regardless of how they react or whatever they do. Because, especially when it's a father or mother, they ain't going to change, Let's just be honest.
Can't expect them to. It literally is too late for them to change.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't expect that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you have to just be a little bit more patient.
Yeah.
But at least you have these tips. You can have that conversation with whoever it is, assuming they're still alive. And if they're not alive, what can you do? You have to forgive. Otherwise, you're just carrying that weight with you forever and ever and ever. You have to forgive them for whatever it is you want to forgive them for. In addition, you have to forgive yourself. Because like I said earlier, it takes 2 hands to shake. You did have a part to play. So let's not keep pointing outward. Remember, the other fingers are pointing inward. So write those letters of forgiveness. Because it's a way to transfer that energy that is stuck inside of you. Right? Because emotions, this is an emotion, it's stuck. Emotions are energy in motion. This is stuck. And it's like what happens when water is stagnant? Everything inside dies. And so by having this energy, which is supposed to flow, energy not created or destroyed, it's always transferred, but we've blocked it inside of us. We're not letting it flow out. But when you write that letter of forgiveness, and I specifically say write and not type, is because it flows through your hands, through your fingers, onto that pencil or pen, onto that piece of paper. And at the end, you can just light that paper and just watch it burn and just fly into thin air. And just watch the energy dissipate into thin air. And it's very healing.
I'm starting to realize one thing. So I did a very similar exercise a couple of years ago. My Reiki healer recommended. But I think either I misunderstood the instruction, but I didn't have any self-forgiveness or asking for forgiveness in my letter. It was a bit of like, here's how I feel. Well, I forgive you. And then it was lit on fire and it was thrown away. But I did miss the part of going easy on myself, which that's kind of stayed.
If I could just add to that as well.
Yeah.
And I think it was Buddha who said this, but even if it's not, apologies for all the Buddhists or followers of other practices. But here, the key is not who said it, but the key is the message. And it goes something along the lines like this. Every breath is a new me. I repeat, every breath is a new me. And the forgiving yourself is important, because if I attach myself to the identity that I was last week, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever happened, but I'm attaching myself to an identity that no longer exists. I've evolved tremendously over the last, since 2016, when I kind of had my aha moment and I started seeing the world differently. So I need to forgive the person who I was. And maybe that was required along my journey of life to become who I am today. If I hold on to that pain that I caused someone else, I'm going to carry that till my death, and then that's just, again, it's a regret that will never go away.
It probably manifests in your body in some ways, which I know it's true for me.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to make that connection. I read that book, The Body Keeps Score. and recently more of Joe Dispenza, because everyone in EO just reads Joe Dispenza. So I'm like, fine, I'll read it. But I want to switch gears now, as I do. Coaching / mentoring.
Yeah.
Same or different? And yeah, so what's the distinction between these two? And then in this particular line of business, so you've got diamond trading, you've got the hotel software, you've got coaching. What are some common misconceptions in this coaching world? What do people don't know, or there's myths about coaching or mentoring that you think that are prevalent right now?
I don't need coaching. There's nothing wrong with me. What are you saying? Why are we even talking about this? There's nothing wrong with me.
That's me. So I'm having my first, I had my first ever business coach. I've been in business now for 4 years this year. That was me for the last 4 years. I'm smart enough. I can figure this out.
Yeah.
I figured it out before, haven't I? I'm good enough. Nothing's broken.
So here's a fun fact. I'm a coach.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm certified. I've gone through vigorous training. I'm blessed to know certain coaches within EO. Shout out to Fatima. She really guided me and pointed me in the right direction in terms of which school of coaching to go do, and she's kind of encouraged me along the whole way. So shout out to her. But I have all the tools, right? I'm fully certified by the International Coaching Federation as well, so I can coach myself, right? However, that doesn't work. So I have a coach. Now my coach, who I mentioned her name earlier, Michelle,
mm-hmm.
she's a master coach. She's done thousands of hours of coaching, which is what gives her that qualification. Plus she's a trainer. In coaching, she's just an amazing human being. Guess what? She has a coach.
She has a coach. So this was my qualification for picking my coach, which I finally signed up to 2 weeks ago, officially. The guy I've been talking to for years. He has 3 coaches himself.
Okay.
For different reasons.
Yeah.
A performance coach, a business coach, and something else coach. Yeah. And those coaches have coaches.
Yeah.
Which is a qualifier for me. I will not work with a coach that doesn't have a coach.
So there you go. The point I'm trying to make here is we can't see our own blind spots. We don't know what we don't know. And the coach is there. Why are you okay getting a sports coach and not a life coach or a business coach or a performance coach or whatever you want to call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That just makes no sense to me.
You get a nutritionist, you're getting a personal trainer.
Right. So you're getting a coach in other areas of your life. But why not for your business acumen? Why not for your life? Why not for your mental state of being? And so, I wanted to share that fun fact.
Yeah.
That I feel, and my personal view is that everyone should have a coach. Because if you want to become a better version of yourself, that's what they're there for. It's that simple. So you asked what's the distinction between coaching and mentoring? Now, I asked different people. People seem to say different things. I'm going to share my perspective.
Yeah.
Okay. You go to a mentor because they have a skill set that you would like to learn from, or they have the network, a skill set, the experience, whatever it is. So I might go to someone who's a mentor, who's maybe, let's say someone who's been running a podcast since the beginning of time, like when podcasting initiated, however many years ago it was, and has done, 1,000+ podcasts, is in the top 10, blah, 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 right? I'll go to them because I want to learn from them, their experience.
It's almost like apprenticeship in that sense.
And they're telling me what to do. They're giving opening doors for me. They're like, okay, buy this equipment. This is how you get the best people onto your podcast. This is the kind of lighting you need. These are the don'ts, etc., etc. So they're really kind of just sharing knowledge, which might take me years to accumulate, but I'm getting it quickly by paying them or whatever the arrangement is to get that information. And it's a fast track. That's me. That's my definition for mentoring. Coaching, on the other hand, at least from the school of thought that I come from, is more, how do you bring out the best in somebody? How do you help them to discover or enable them to discover their blind spots? So it's more about asking the right questions rather than telling you or what to do. So coach is there to enable you to discover for yourself, whereas the mentor is sharing that experience with you.
A mentor is someone who's already walked that path. They know the best way that at least they've taken to get there. They can still see their foot markings on the path, and they can look back like, okay, 2 years ago I did this, a year ago I did this. But the coach is almost like by your side. Like, oh, that's where you want to go? Okay, let's think about this. If you had XYZ skills, what do you think is the next best thing to do? Okay, I'll jam with you, but you're going to make up your mind. It's going to be your call. And a coach can be just jamming out loud. Coach is a bit more regular interference in your life, versus mentors can kind of drop in and drop out. Right? Like for these questions to work, they need to be asked consistently, and there needs to be some accountability. And this is my selling point on why I finally got a coach, is why I didn't get a coach for a long time. Another reason was I thought mistakenly, now that I think mistakenly, they don't have skin in the game. They come in, ask me these questions and give me a roadmap, help me. But if I fail, I fail, right? If I succeed, I succeed. Like they're not tied to the results. Unless I tie them to a result, I'm not trusting anyone for their opinions or their advice. What rubbish. It was absolutely rubbish. I'm actually glad that my coach doesn't have skin in the game, so they can think more freely. They can be more aggressive.
And allow me to offer another perspective. The coach does have skin in the game. If you succeed, meaning if you benefit from the coaching, you're going to tell a lot of your friends and your colleagues. And the chances are that coach now is going to get some leads and or new business. So yes, they may not be involved financially or otherwise, but
the reputation's on the line too.
There is skin in the game, because ultimately they depend on clients, and you could potentially get them more clients because it was beneficial for you.
Be a success story for them, be a testimonial, be an evangelist for them.
Exactly.
Yeah, and have proof that I've done this before.
Absolutely.
And I can probably do it again. The other thing was accountability. I'm trying to mature now, and one of the things I've avoided is accountability. Because now finally that I'm my own boss, I've had a career for a long time. I've been working in different industries, and then I was kind of sick of having a boss, which is the one reason I became my own boss. But 4 years into this, like Alina and I are co-bosses. We boss each other, but we're very kind to each other. We're very understanding. We're very sweet to each other. So we're not, both of us, I love that too, but at some point it can get too coddly, right? Like we're a bit too careful with each other as well, and careful. And it's nice to have someone on the outside holding you accountable objectively. And just looking at what you said you wanted to do and what you're doing. And does that align? Do your words and your actions align? Or are you bullshitting me?
I love what you just said on accountability. And I love that it can't be cute and cuddly. It's got to be real, right? So I want to share a story from one of my mentors, Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, who I have the privilege of spending quite a lot of time with. And he's also one of the top executive coaches in the world, right? Ranked by Thinkers 50 and some other publications. Also, I think he's like a 5-time New York Times bestseller with some of his books and all of that. Anyway, he's really good at what he does. He pays someone, I repeat, he pays someone to call him up every single day and ask him a series of about 20 questions.
No, that is so smart.
Okay.
And
that person who calls him up doesn't say, oh, you could have, or why, or there's no judgment. It's just they ask the question, they record the response, and then they're giving you that summary on a daily or weekly basis. That's what they're paid to do. Just call up and ask the series of questions. Now, him knowing that he has to answer the question Even if it's not someone he's accountable to, in the sense that, it's not going to change any outcome. He's paid that person just to ask the questions.
Yeah.
He still feels guilt. He still feels, oh my God, I got to get it done, right? So the question, that's what it was kind of aha moment for me, is it doesn't matter how good you are. You need to have accountability partners in life. So people, sometimes they look at me and go, Saahil, you're so disciplined. You in your eating, in your exercise, in your this, in your that, blah, 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 blah. First of all, I want to clarify, I'm not disciplined. Discipline is the wrong word. It comes along with a connotation that makes it sound like it's going to be hard or whatever. I call it self-love.
Yeah.
I love myself, so I do those things. It's coming from a place of love, not from a place of, oh my God, if I don't do it, blah, blah, this will happen to me. It's not fear. But the second thing is, I pay people to hold me accountable. I'm paying someone to show up at my doorstep twice a week for yoga. I'm paying someone twice a week to show up for exercising. I'm paying someone to be on the court with me when I'm playing tennis. They're holding me accountable. And I've shared with me what outcome I'm looking for in each of those areas. And that they have to do what it takes to get me there.
Yeah.
Now, if I remove all of them and say, look, hey, Naeem, let's go for tennis. And, I'll just meet some friends or go to yoga class or, go to the gym. Yeah, I might do it.
Yeah.
I may not do it.
It's always that last minute text, like, sorry, you can't make it.
I can find lots of reasons not to go.
Yeah.
But by having people holding me accountable, coupled with the self-love, things get done.
Absolutely. I think Alina would agree a lot with you. She's very much your style in the sense that her discipline could be better, but she knows that. So she's not like completely oblivious to that fact. And every time she pays someone for a certain activity, whether it's nutrition, whether it's physical training, or tying things into, something she picked up from me was like tying physical activities with social activities that have a certain dependency allowed. So when I play football, I play three times a week. It's always 7 aside, 14 guys. You have to say in at the start of the week to reserve your spot. If you back out last minute, it's a 6 versus 7 game. And 13 guys will be hating you for it. So it's kind of built-in accountability. So we started doing the same for volleyball now. Like it's a way to get grounding on the sand, the beach, get outside, have a few laughs. But there's also 9 other people waiting for you because you said you're part of the group. And if you disappear for too long, what does that look like?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Add that to the list for different methods of accountability.
Yeah, definitely. I'm waking up to that. I've been avoiding that, that first question I asked you, looking at myself in the mirror. And accountability is such a slap to the face. A good one. Hopefully. We'll see. I'll see how bruised I am after a year of coaching. Hello, everyone. I want to take a moment to share something that's really, really close to my heart. As you know, this podcast isn't just a series of episodes. It's you and I getting mentored by the wisest of the wisest. Each episode is crafted with care, aiming to bring not just stories, but wisdom and insight into the fascinating and sometimes lonely world of entrepreneurship. This is more than just a podcast. It's a personal mentorship session recorded on camera for all of us to learn and grow together. And this is where you come in. If any episode has resonated with you, your subscription or your vote means the world to me. Every subscription lights a fire inside of me and fuels me to keep delivering content that I wish had existed before I started this podcast 2 years ago. So I humbly ask for your support. Please hit pause now and find that subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening to this. It's a small action for you, but it means everything to me. Thank you for being a part of this community and for your support and for choosing to walk this path with me. Stay curious and stay inspired. Thank you so much. I wanted to ask you also, it's just a personal thing I'd like to check with everyone, but what's the first book that you think changed your life, and changed your life in the sense that it just broke you or just broke old mental model and replace with. Now, we all kind of remember the last few books that we did, but what was that first one that popped that cherry of, expanding your mind or giving you a different perspective?
The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. It's an absolutely brilliant book. But I'm going to give this caveat. In my life, when I've gone after books, I've enjoyed them. Some of them I've not enjoyed. But there are other books that have just appeared at the right moments.
Come to you.
Someone gifted it. I was traveling. It's usually a gift, right? Or someone recommended it and said, Saahil, based on the conversation we had, you should definitely check out this book. But usually it's the books that have been given to me. They've literally been gifts. I've not bought them. And they're the ones that I've enjoyed the most. And I find these gifts come to you at the time when you're asking those questions, whatever those questions may be. And when I was reading The Untethered Soul, I had a lot of questions around, who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose in life? And I want to drill down on that a little bit, because you think the journey to discover your purpose will be a pleasant one, but it was horrific for me, because I realized not only did I not know it, but I asked a few people around me, close to me, Ekta, the spouse, and some others. They seem to know their purpose. Now, I'm thinking to myself, people around me know their purpose. What the hell? I don't even know my own. And that puts even more pressure. So it went from bad to worse. Okay. And I was not enjoying the journey at all. Painful. And then, this book appeared in my life. I can't even remember who gave it or how it came into my hands. But once I started reading, I couldn't put it down. And what I loved in the book, and this is one of my many takeaways, is Michael Singer says that we all have a universal purpose. And that's for our soul to leave our body in a better state than it entered it. And when I read that, I came to peace. Because I said, you know what? That works. Now, later in life, I drilled down a little further, and I was able to discover, my more concrete purpose, something really specific. But at that moment in time, I went from a state of anger, a state of resentment, a state of, being anxious, to a state of calm, a state of bliss, a state of love. Just from shifting from, I have no clue what my purpose is and everyone seems to be talking about it and why can't I discover mine, to universal life purpose. The soul just needs to leave the body in a better state than it entered it. And it made me realize as well, Naeem, that that's a great motto to have in life. Every room I enter, how do I leave it in a better state than I left it? Every person I touch, how do I leave that relationship in a better state than I left it? And so I thank Michael Singer. I haven't met him yet. I hope to meet him one day, but his book was a game changer for me.
I love the sound of his voice. Every time I listen to a podcast he's on, he's just so giggly.
Yeah.
He's just a character. Why else I like him is because he is a business owner too.
Yes.
So he has his feet in both worlds.
Yes.
In the real and the, I won't say unreal, but the other realm.
I love what you just said, because many times, you hear some of these, someone who's elevated spiritually, and that's their life, like a monk or something.
Yeah. But you can't relate to them.
Yeah. Right? And then you go, wow, this is amazing. I love it. Yeah. And I got to do it. But they're not in my world. There's a disconnect. Even if they were at one point, the point is today, they're so far away. It's like, oh, that person is not within reach.
Right.
But when you hear someone like Michael Singer,
mm-hmm.
or you see people like myself and lots of other people out there who are, one, treading on that spiritual path, but yet in this world where they're focusing on their business, their family, their social life, their personal growth, etc., You're like, whoa, if he can do it or if she can do it,
Yeah.
I can do it too.
That's
It's
definitely
within reach.
That's definitely what I'm more attracted to. So I didn't read that particular book, but I got the companion journal to that book. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's work. It's a lot of work. It gives you a prompt and a couple of pages to fill out, and just filling out 2 less than A4 size pages takes everything out of you in that day. So I do recommend, if people are going to do that particular untethered soul journal, don't do it in the mornings. Just do it at night, because it's going to make you pass out. And these are some really heavy questions. And sometimes these questions don't even make sense to me because I haven't read the material. So I have to really look at that question, reread it 5 times, and I still can't answer. And just a tip for anyone struggling to answer that, I just rewrite that question with my own pen on the page, and write things like, what the fuck are you saying, Michael? And then the answer just starts flowing. Just rewriting the question with your hand, or saying like, what do you mean, Michael? It almost feels like he holds my hand from some spiritual realm and starts putting out the answers. And you look back at what you wrote and you're like, wow, that was therapy. But I do agree with the earlier point you made too. These kind of books, like asking for a recommendation or taking one from a podcast, doesn't mean that's going to be the book for you. It's going to be something that just, when the student is ready, the master appears.
Absolutely.
Kind of thing, right? For me, it was The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari by Robin Sharma. And I've never liked anything from Robin Sharma afterwards. Sorry, Robin. Love you. You changed my life. But it was just that. And that one particular book just came to me at a time where I was changing 85% of my life. And that book was literally a guide on someone changing their life 85%, if not fully. And it just appeared, it had been spoken about by a certain individual in my life for 2 years, until I walked in a bookstore and it shouted at me. Sometimes books do that in a bookstore, right? They just look at you and they shout at you. They're like, I'm right here. Pick me up. Took it home, had the same experience, couldn't put it down. I wish I'd liked his other stuff too, but I like what I like about him too. He has both feet. Like, he's got the business and he's got this, and kind of meld in well together. Next thing I want to jump on is, as new entrepreneurs, Alina and I tend to get lots of advice that we don't ask for. Well-intentioned, well-meaning advice, and but advice is cheap. And I do strongly sometimes have this gut intuition that some of the advice we receive is terrible. Or just not very commonsensical, which allude to some form of like, you got to sell your soul, or you got to do the thing that you don't have to do just for the money, kind of thing. Since you've been in business, it's been quite a while now, what is some of the, well-intentioned but bad advice you've seen kind of floating around in the entrepreneurship world that I and people like Alina and I can safely ignore when we hear that? Because I like your foundation, I like your philosophy. And if there's something that, doesn't sit well with you in terms of common advice that's given to entrepreneurs, I'd love to hear what that would be.
Look, I unfortunately, I'm going to have to disappoint you. And I'll tell you why. What might be bad advice for me or for someone else might be really good advice for you.
That's true.
And when I share advice with you, it's based on my experience, whether it's my actual experience or what I've heard from others, or it might even be secondhand advice. But it's from my lens, without knowing all the facts. Because you know your business way better than I do. So I can give you advice, thinking I know how some of the things work. And maybe some of it's good, maybe some of it's bad. But I like what you alluded to is, what is your gut telling you? What is your gut telling you? Because a lot of people are top heavy. Like my previous self. I'm an engineer by background. So I did my bachelor's and master's in electronic and electrical engineering. And everything had to be ones and zeros. Everything had to be logic. But here's the thing. Just because it's not known yet, or you don't know it, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I don't know if you remember these times from school, but I remember in chemistry, they used to tell me an atom comprises of an electron, a neutron, and a proton. And that's as small as it can get. Today, They're teaching the kids something different. Hey, it can go smaller. So does that mean that it didn't exist before? It just means we hadn't discovered it yet. So just because you haven't discovered it yet doesn't mean it doesn't exist, or that mankind hasn't discovered it yet doesn't exist. And we have this amazing thing called our gut feeling, our intuition. And are we really listening to it? Or are we top heavy and going, no, I know what's best for me?
Mm-hmm.
Versus now, if I go into more of the spiritual or the energy world, is I feel that we're all, connected somehow. And the intuition is coming, the message is coming from all sorts of sources, maybe even from the divine. And so if I'm just thinking about my head, which is limited knowledge, I may not know what the answer is. But if I tap into my intuition, I'm accessing a greater source of knowledge. So it's about listening to your intuition rather than what is the bad advice that was given. Because realistically speaking, if they don't know all the things that you know, almost everything that they say is going to be bad advice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It goes back to partially to skin in the game thing too, right? Like when I had, for example, in university, a friend giving me relationship advice. And, in a fit of rage, I kind of blurted out that I can't take advice from someone who's not going to suffer the consequences of such advice. And it was a mean thing to say. We're still friends. We're still very close friends. And it was that kind of relationship. It made us anti-fragile. But like I've always had that kind of feeling too. Like, don't give me advice because I'm going to suffer from it. But that's a bit of an aggressive, violent way to look at things. It's more about just like, thank you. Have gratitude, I guess. And I'm just thinking out loud. Gratitude for thinking about me and trying to want to help me, but my gut disagrees. I may not have the words to verbalize or articulate how I think this might not be good for me, but thank you.
Well, look, you've raised a very good point. You've raised a really good point. Mm-hmm. You're getting unsolicited advice. Yeah. Now, it might be, you know if it's something that's genuine, first of all, right? Assuming that you've understood that it's genuine, it's someone who's giving you, some of their knowledge. But the main thing is they care about you. Whether you like to hear it or not is a different story. They care about you. It's coming from a place of love. Mm-hmm. Once you've acknowledged that, you have to understand it's a gift. Just like you said just now.
Yeah.
And what do you do when you get a gift?
Say thanks.
Yeah, you say thank you. And what happens, it's your birthday, you've received many gifts. What happens to the ones that you didn't like?
You want to know the actual answer? My family hates me. I return gifts.
There you go.
I actually do.
You return them, you give them to someone else, right? You recycle or something else. You might just shove it away somewhere in the corner. But the point is, you chose which gift you wanted to keep and which gifts you did not want to keep.
Yeah.
So if you've got unsolicited advice from people who genuinely care, they're not trying to say, I'm better than you. Because, again, sometimes it hits the ego like, I know, you don't have to tell me and, all those things. But let's just put the ego aside and be humble. You've received 5 gifts. Out of them, 2 of them you go, hey, that actually is worth exploring.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something to it. The other 3, I'll recycle, store away, or, return them or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
But it's a gift. Now, if I take the advice from people with that attitude, the chances are, especially the ones who gave me something that I appreciated, they will give me another gift. And they'll give me another gift over time. But if I blurt out, I don't need anything from you, you don't know what's going on, or just shut that door. First of all, I was being rude because I didn't accept the gift. Again, I'm assuming that it's a genuine gift, right?
Yeah.
Because there is that other situation.
There is
as well.
another situation, yeah.
But assuming it's genuine, I've shut that door and I've also prevented more gifts coming to me in the future.
Yeah.
Why would I want to do that?
Yeah. It's the struggle I have is with unqualified gifts or unqualified advice. And who am I to qualify people? I have a sense, right, that first of all, if you've never driven a car, you can't tell me what a better way to drive a car is. But at the same time, sometimes having an external perspective is nice. So I'll get advice from non-business owners about my business. And there are so many realities that I understand that I go straight in my head. My gut says, not possible, not aligned with my philosophy, against my values. But I don't know how to say, especially the first time is easy. Thanks, I'll look into it. Hey, what about that idea that I gave you a month later? 3 months later, remember I've been telling you to do that? You haven't done that yet. That's where my struggle is. Like, how do you shut someone down very politely? Because at that point, part of it is taking care of yourself. But like, yeah, I don't know how that conversation goes without being mean, and I'm struggling with that. At least being like,
I'm not saying this is what you say, but just one example is, I discussed it with the team, and we looked at all the priorities that we have that we're working on. And right now we've had to park it because there's some other things that are of higher priority.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate the tips that you gave. And when and if we do act upon it, I'll surely let you know.
I like that. Bookmark this. This is for my video editor. Rohit, please bookmark this one. We're going to use this a lot. We're close to our closing, so we have a few more places to travel. Some are inward, some are external. Switching gears again, it's always easier to look backwards. Hindsight's 2020 when I talk about failures with guests on this podcast. But I've started changing my tune a little bit. I want to get back into the present. I want to get a sneak peek of how your problem-solving brain kind of works, or goal-achieving mind works. Is there a particular challenge in either of your businesses, any of your businesses, right now that you're facing, whether it's the diamond trading, ResNet, or coaching that you're currently working through? It requires a bit more conscious either firefighting or planning or debugging or decision making. And the reason I'm asking this, I'd like to hear details on how in this current moment, 2024 March, as we sit here, what models you're using to fight some of your current challenges. And if they're confidential, you don't have to share exactly what they are, but
sure,
I'd love to hear.
So I'll talk about the hospitality business. And even though I'm not involved at an operational level, I'm still involved. And so big decisions, I'm involved, I'm a board member, etc. So what happened was, many years ago, we transitioned to a company, and I'm just not going to mention their name. So we basically, just to highlight to the audience, we haven't created the tech. We utilize existing solutions, and we add the layers of implementation, support, servicing, etc. And what happens is, some of these tech providers, they want to work with the very large chains. We're working with the independents and small chains. So, we have different client bases. Anyway, there's one company we were working with. They were one of the biggest in our industry. They're a corporation. Now, even though it was exciting for us because we're like, we're signing with the best, we're signing with one of the biggest, they've got some of the top hotel brands using their tech. The reality was, it wasn't a cultural fit. And so biggest and best is not always best for you. But we were stuck in a contract that we had signed. And that contract was approximately 7 years, right?
7 years.
Yeah. I mean, look, the problems didn't happen in the beginning.
Yeah.
But when the problems did start is when we realized that their primary client was the shareholder. Our primary client is our team. Our secondary client, which is almost the same level, it's not like there's a big difference, is the client themselves, who's paying us for the services that we're offering, the hotels.
Yeah.
And then third comes the shareholder. In their case, it was the shareholder, then their clients, then their people. Like, just to give you an idea, in 7 years, we had 5 account managers. And so we weren't a cultural fit, not because I don't say they're a bad company. It's just they don't operate in a similar fashion to we do. It might be good for someone else, just not good for us.
Right.
So we switched to another company. where we felt the fit was much better, and they were supposed to release their new tech. So we signed with them based on the release of their new tech, which was
this new company.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we knew that we'd lose some hotels in the transition because they're comfortable where they are. But this new tech didn't get released. And the old tech is a massive downgrade from where we were before. So we started losing a lot of our hotels as clients. And that's not a pretty sight because, after COVID, a lot of people are traveling again. Hotels are doing fairly well. And so our business, which should be going upwards again after, 2 years of absolute disaster, where we had to really manage our cash flow and our team members, all of a sudden, we're not really growing and we're still suffering and struggling. Luckily, because of this is where we learn from mistakes, right? We don't call it a mistake, we call it a learning. Because we were in a contract that didn't allow us to use any other tech providers with the corporation.
Right.
This time round, we signed a non-exclusive.
Okay.
So luckily...
So that was 7 years and exclusive.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Which was very common, by the way. It's very common. The fact that we now have a non-exclusive, it's not common at all.
That's a game changer.
But because we learned from the challenges we had, we signed this. So even and now, by the way, we're 2 years into the contract. Still, the new tech hasn't come out. But what we did in the meantime is we started looking at our other options, and we came across this company, again, who we just recently signed with, a non-exclusive. But their tech today, not tomorrow, not day after,
is ready.
Today is ready and more than enough to get back the clients that we had lost or similar category hotels. Okay. But more importantly, apart from the tech, they're a cultural fit. They actually reminded us of the first company we ever signed with back in 2009, where it felt like it was fun. Let's just call it that. It was fun to work with them. They enjoyed working with us. We enjoyed working with them. And, the founder, one of the founders of the company, I was in the US. He flew to meet me. We had breakfast together and we just had a lovely conversation. And what I was doing at the time, I said, Saahil, don't look at the numbers. Don't look at the tech. Are they the right fit for us? I felt that when we signed with this company hoping for the tech to improve, we thought the culture was okay, but we didn't really dive deep into it. We didn't spend time with them. This time we said, we're not making that. Again, you learn from your mistakes.
Right.
We said, we're not going to do that. We're going to spend time with the team and not just who the founder is. Let me speak to a manager in the company. Let me speak to someone who's the head of sales.
Yeah.
So we're speaking at different levels. And different people in our team are interacting with them to see, is it a cultural fit?
Yeah.
And so after...
Because your fortunes are tied together, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And because we did that and we went into depth about what we could do, we're actually cross-selling. So we're not just paying them for the tech that they're providing us. They love how detail-oriented we are. And so some of the things which are more costly and or that they don't do themselves, they're outsourcing to us.
Like the implementation and the servicing.
Yeah, some of that. Absolutely. So what's happening now is that we're serving each other. And again, we talked about co-creating and having the alignment. We're aligned. Now, unfortunately, it took us many years to discover that. and some real hardships along the way where, our company almost was done twice.
Yeah.
Once we were told that the shareholders said, we're not going to pump in any more money. And that was like a wake-up call. And the second time was COVID. When you're in hospitality and you depend on hotel bookings and suddenly your sales go down 90%, that's bad.
Yeah.
So twice we've almost gone out of business. But again, we've learned, we've managed these hardships. We never fired anyone along the way, by the way. But obviously, we fire if someone is a poor performer, but we're not going to fire just to cut costs.
Yeah.
Because we really, what I tell you earlier, they are first priority, our team members. Because they've given, and now I saw when things were tough and we're coming out of it, they've gone above and beyond to keep us together. So I'm very blessed with the team that we have. I feel very blessed that we found the right cultural fit. And now we're really excited And when I say we just found, I mean we signed last week.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah.
Congrats.
So it's that recent.
Okay,
so
this
now
is fresh.
It's very fresh.
Yeah.
So we're really looking forward to this new partnership.
That's amazing.
But like I said, the most important thing which we ignored was the cultural fit.
How did you diagnose that? Because you probably went through a lot of pain and probably started the journey top heavy, right? Like, what's the problem? What's going wrong? But diagnosing something like the culture is not aligned is not a brain thing. That's a heart/gut thing. How did you come to that conclusion?
Well, I find that when something goes wrong in business, in life, whatever it is, I used to have a tendency of just moving on. Forget it, just let's move on. But now I go, no, let's celebrate this failure. Because then I'm looking for the gold nuggets that I can take out of it. What didn't work out? And what am I going to take moving forward that's going to benefit me, the company, all the people, stakeholders, etc. Now that I have this new information that in my head that I did not have, or myself or the other board members or the other stakeholders. And so when you celebrate the failure or the learning, let's call it what it is, no matter how painful it is, I find that you just go richer and richer. And this kind of is a very valuable lesson in life. I am who I am today because of my failures, not because of my successes. The successes only came because I failed again and again and again. And each time I learned from it and I was able to incorporate that, and that added to the success. But without the failures, I don't think I'd be successful. Actually, I know I wouldn't be successful. So it's that all those falls that I've had have made me who I am today. So I'm super grateful that they've happened. Was not at the time. It caused a lot of pain financially, mentally, or otherwise. But today when I look back, I'm glad they happened when they did, because the way I look at it, there's always two sides of looking at things, is if it happens at a later stage in my life, maybe the fall would have been much harder.
I read a tweet once by Naval Ravikant. That's how you say his last name. Tech guy, VC, Silicon Valley kind of dude. He said something, and I'm going to butcher this because I don't have a great photographic memory, but said something like, I hope you have your big failure early on in life. So where everyone on Twitter is kind of wishing everyone success and being all positive, like over positive thinking, he just goes out and says, I hope you have your failure much early on. And I kind of relate to that because when I started my career as in finance, you went into investment banking, didn't you, as well? So I was doing my CFA. I became a foreign exchange trader. I had a rock solid first year out of college. Like, it was beautiful. It was great. So many commissions. And later on, eventually, as it happens, you will fail. It hurts so much more. It hurts so much more because you're riding high. You've got this confidence. But I feel like I was winning without learning. I was winning. I wasn't learning. And when that first failure happened and came back down to ground, I'm glad things happened. Whatever happened. I do want to come close to a wrap. Okay, cool. Let's do two. So because of the coaching business, you have to build a personal brand, which means you have to be kind of active with your thoughts, feelings, life, and everything. And you gave me such a hard time because I have so much to research. But having said that, what do you think people that know you or don't know you, what do you think people misunderstand the most about you? So if there's one thing that people are just generally surprised to know about you that's not visible, or if you are misunderstood.
There's two things. One is people's perception of me hasn't changed. And perception is a very hard thing to change. So they will see me as the Saahil from, let's say, a decade ago. And when I do certain things today, let's say food habits, for example, they know that I was a picky eater when I was younger. And so now when I'm at their house or at a restaurant, oh, I didn't know you eat, salad now. I don't know that. I didn't know that you're okay with onions now. I didn't know you're okay with coriander now. And by the way, these are things I was picky with earlier.
Yeah.
Real.
I mean, with the past, you ever had pong?
Pong?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's like been constant.
Yeah.
The pong has been constant.
Yeah.
Okay.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
My identity in their minds is still linked. It's still the older version of me. So it's like, an operating system. I'm now on whatever Windows is on now, right? It's like on 11 or 12 or something.
I've lost track.
Yeah, whatever it is. But imagine if someone thinks you're still on Windows 7. That's how they see you. Yeah. And so that's what's happened. So that's one thing where I'm like, then I have to update them and, blah, blah, blah. And even then, something happens again in a couple of months or years. And it's the repeat of what they said earlier. And it made me realize people's perception is very hard to change. Unless if you're constantly checking in with them. So that's one thing. And two, people think just because I've made certain changes in my life where I love myself more, so I take care of I treat my body with a lot more respect than I did before, they think I'm boring. They think, sorry, not I'm boring. That might be correct from their point of view, but they think I'm not having fun. And I say, okay. Fine, maybe from your point of view, but I'm actually enjoying myself a lot because I'm now doing the things that I love to do. I have the courage to say no to the things that are not in line with where I want to go. And so again, I guess that comes back to perception to some extent, but one is they're still thinking of me as the Saahil from a decade ago or whatever the time frame is. And two is they think my life is boring and I'm not having fun.
Yeah. I'm totally relate to some of these things that you're saying right now too. Like we hosted an iftar recently and we use it as a chance to have some of our different members of our circles kind of meet each other. And some of them are new to our life as well, right? So they're getting to know us while we're getting to know them. And they're kind of sharing their things that they do to have fun. And I'm kind of glazing over because they don't sound like fun to me. And then, and they're the usual things that in society would be called fun, like going out, staying out late, partying, this kind of traveling, all that kind of, Instagram life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know any of that. Like, oh, it must be pretty boring. I'm like, no, have you seen the joy in my face when I read a book, listen to a podcast, play football, go for a long walk, put on my favorite tunes and just go for a walk? And, to them, the perception, the look I was getting, like, that's fucking boring. I'm like, no, but this is so much fun. And I told Alina this morning, I'm like, what my problem is? When I tell people my hobbies or my self-care routines, I sound so pretentious. Because I've been that guy on the judging side of things where if you talked to me 15 years ago, and you told me, oh, you read books in your free time, you listen to podcasts that improve your mind, like you're being pretentious. Shut up with that. But now I'm on that side, so I have a kind of similar challenge. But you know what? That saying no thing, it's beautiful. And imagine if everyone kind of lived like that. If people just stop attending things or doing things that they don't really want to do. And how much more peace they'll have. And if they have more peace, sitting next to them would be so peaceful for me. And it'd just be peace all around. So here's to saying more no's. Yeah. Final question for you, Saahil. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. And if I gave you, okay, this is a copied question from Tim Ferriss. Tim, sorry, you don't have a copyright on questions. If you had a billboard on Sheikh Zayed Road, millions of people passing by every day, they get to read a message. Cannot be commercial, so you can't be selling hospitality software.
Damn it, or that's diamonds, what I was going to put.
Or diamonds. or it can't be your latest book. If there was a message you'd want people to read, and I have a feeling it's going to be a question, but I don't want to give that away. What would you want to say to these people? What would that message be that would fit a billboard on Sheikh Zayed Road?
Trying to keep this concise. So that it's
readable,
readable and to the point. It is a question. Let's go with this. What is more important to you? Outer wealth or inner wealth? Question mark.
That's heavy. You can almost predict 80% of the responses.
Well, I don't know. I feel that when people read that, that could be the start of something magical, where they realize that maybe what they were focusing on and where they gave a lot of their energy was maybe the wrong type of wealth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's super important, and thank you for that one, because you go to YouTube today, you go to Instagram today, it's a bunch of these 20-year-olds. I love them because they're so cute and there's so much energy and good passion. But it's very outer wealth driven kind of content that the young generation now consumes.
Yeah.
And they feel less than they are because of this until they acquire that, which has been sold to them. And it's, Ponzi scheme after Ponzi scheme. Some of them, again, well-intentioned. Some kids are doing well, but I don't see it as a sustainable model of how they're working on financially. The point, I guess, is that my wish for the world and my role in the world, if I have a wish, I should do something about it as well, is to have at least myself, those around me, thinking more about inner wealth. And thanks to this conversation, I get to do that a bit more. And you let me jam on some of my thoughts. So thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing all that you shared. There's a thing that we do. Alina and I both listen to all our episodes together, and we kind of take notes like nerds. Like, when he said this or when she said that, and kind of building our own book, of a guidebook almost. Our mentors. You guys are not coaches yet, but you're a coach that's a mentor, which is great. But thank you so much for sharing your perspective. I like that you're honest. I like that you're vulnerable. Is there anything that you want to say as parting words? Anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to cover?
It's a short story.
Tell me. I love short stories.
The sailor goes to the captain and says, "Captain, when am I getting my pay?" So the captain says, "Tomorrow, sailor." The sailor goes to bed and he's thinking about all the things that he's going to do when he gets his money. The next day, goes up to the captain. Captain, can I get my money, please?" The captain looks at him and says, "Hey, didn't I tell you tomorrow?" So the moral is, tomorrow never comes. There's one nugget that has impacted you in this podcast. Don't worry about doing all sorts of things. Just take that one nugget that gels with you, that resonates with you the most, and put it into action. But do it today.
I would say call your loved one. I'm not giving you ideas. You pick your own. But thanks so much, man. That story. You know what? I love stories. Thanks for giving that to me, because that's my party trick. I go around different parties and tell people stories. So I have one more in my arsenal. But thank you so much, Saahil. Thanks for coming on. We might have to do a round 2. I think there's a lot more you and I can talk about.
A lot of juice.
Yeah. Thanks, man.